So, let's talk about political systems. So, what is a political system? A political system is the system of a government in a nation. In simple terms, it's how a government is run. The political system of a nation can be assessed with two different qualifiers: how collective or individualist they are, and how democratic and totalitarian they are. Most nations don't exist on the extreme ends of these scales. They exist somewhere in the middle, between all of them. Let's start by first defining collectivism and individualism. Collectivism is a political system that emphasizes collective goals over individual goals. In this system, individual freedoms may be restricted for the greater good of society. For example, in 2011, San Francisco banned toy giveaways in meals to reduce childhood obesity in the city. From collectivism came socialism, a similar political process that puts all means of production into the hands of the government to control. This political system was championed by Karl Marx, who argued through socialism, workers could be fairly compensated for their work and benefit society as a whole instead of individual capitalists. The ideas of socialism broke into two separate camps in the 1900s: communism and social democracy. Communists believed that socialism could only come from violent revolution and a totalitarian dictatorship. These ideals were at its peak in the 1970s, with China, Cuba, Eastern Europe, and the USSR all being communist states. However, by the 1990s, most of these governments had failed, leaving only North Korea, China, and Cuba. On the other hand, social democracy tries to achieve socialism through democratic means and remains a popular form of government to this day. Notable countries include Great Britain, Germany, Sweden, and Australia. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum is individualism. Individualism is based on the ideals that individuals should have free will over their economic and political pursuits. The basic ideals of individualism came from two different tenets: the importance of guaranteeing individual freedoms and self-expression, and letting people pursue their own economic self-interest to better serve society. On the other end of the political dimension is democracy and totalitarianism. Democracy refers to a political system in which the government is by the people. Originally created in ancient Greece, citizens directly affected decision-making, but this system doesn't really work too well in nations of tens or hundreds of millions. Representative democracy came along to fill that need, where citizens elected individuals to represent them. To make sure representatives could be held responsible for their actions, certain safeguards were created, including freedom of expression, opinion, and organization, free media, regular elections, universal adult suffrage, limited terms for representatives, a fair court system independent from the political system, a non-political state bureaucracy, a non-political police force and armed services, and open state information. The sibling to democracy is totalitarianism, a form of government where one party or person controls all spheres of human and political life. Most key aspects of democracy are restricted or banned, and citizens critical of these ideas could be imprisoned or killed. In the world today, totalitarianism exists in four different forms: communist totalitarianism, which is what it sounds like, communist totalitarianism, existing only in China, Vietnam, Laos, North Korea, and Cuba, with the former being more totalitarian than communist. Theocratic totalitarianism, where nations are governed according to religious principles. The most common examples follow Islamic principles for lawmaking, like Iran and Saudi Arabia. Tribal totalitarianism, where one tribe dominates all the political power in the system. This is most commonly found in African nations due to improper border drawing done by colonists in the 19th century. Right-wing totalitarianism, which usually permits some individual economic freedoms but restricts everything else. They are usually hostile to socialist or communist ideals, which is why political freedom is so heavily controlled. They were found in fascist Germany and Italy, and 1980s Taiwan and South Korea, but all these countries are now democracies. And with that, that's all the elements of a political system. I'm gonna see you next time. Bye bye!